And we are on the air. Hi, I'm Pete Bickford. Welcome to the ComicBase Livestream. For the next hour or so, we'll be talking about some really cool stuff about password hacks and why your computer is, constantly under threat and all sorts of crazy things, and what we're all going to be doing about them. We'll be getting into some the cool tech stuff that is surprisingly interesting about what it takes to actually lock down your computer and keep you safe from things, and some really big news we've had on our front about what we've done to make that all happen for you in a way that doesn't make you crazy, because making you crazy is another thing that security really seems to specialize in. But anyway, before we get into that one, I want to say hi, folks here. Shout out to Agent Cap, almost one of the first in the door here. By the way, caught your show this week and had some really cool new things he was showing off that he had picked up. If you guys don't know it, Department of Comics has got his own live stream there, and worth a follow on that one. Do check that out. But he has shown us some really cool stuff, which he's just actually added to ComicBase, and so we'll be adding that one in the next update. Speaking of the next update, actually, we'll get to that in a minute. I do want to say hi to folks. Rob Weinberg's in the house here. Zadu Comics joining us here. Mike Beam from Vancouver, Washington. Jet City Comics out here. Chris Brissol. And this is 74 in Pleasant Green Valley from Brian Price. And folks are coming in. And we got a lot to get through, so we're going to get straight to it. So let me just get my show notes all set up here. This is one of those, it's going to be a horrible show because I had to do so much prep work for it because there was so much to talk about. So we actually have things like slides and stuff. So you're surefire, key that this is going to go horribly. So just you're all braced. So we'll do it there. Anyway, so getting into it here, the content update this week. Let me go ahead and show that one because again, I have slides if I get them on screen. God, I have to close so many windows. Yes, doing show prep until literally seconds before show is really one of the dumber things you could possibly do, and that's why I do it continually. Anyway, this was this week's update. It came out a little bit late this week due to the holiday. 8,843 new issues, 18,649 price and issue updates, 8,107 covers, and I do believe my note said that there were 5,000 were sent in by a single guy. Let me see what my breakdown on that one is. Let's see. We improved. It says 8,107 new covers, improved another 13,923 comic issues. The covers on file currently our score is 1,222,525. Past 1.22 million, still climbing. Covers back to back. I'm not going to do that gag this week. I'm going to give it a break. It's we can't do it every week, and we went to Elvis's home last time, so we'll just park it from there. But if you did buy one of everything in the catalog, it would cost you a cool $280.8 million. One nice segue here is I'm going to be preparing a price update, which I hope to share weekly. I'm sorry, not weekly, but monthly. Probably start, we'll do the June one for next week's show. Honestly, just too much to get through for this time, but I do want to make that a regular feature of both the site and the podcast, looking at the overall breakdowns of the comic market. I got some really slick coding going on there so I can get overall market breakdowns of where the big gainers and losers were, scattered across ages and genres and so forth. It should be an interesting show, and based on actual numbers as opposed to just making stuff up, which is how this stuff normally goes in the business. Anyway, other things that are interesting this week. We finally gave in. DC, you have broken us. Congratulations. Yes. Aquaman 9th series, later issues. We've now relented. They are now officially Emperor Aquaman. I'll be honest. Oh, and also New Teen Titans 5th series is now later issues, now New Titans 2nd series. About 4 months ago, they did a title swap on both of those. And honestly, we had to make a call in real time. It was like an audible. And we had to say, is this going to be one of those things like Spectacular Spider-Man where they don't really mean it because they changed it to Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man, maybe just Peter Parker the next week. And some of the craziest mix-ups in all of comic indexing come from following Captain America and Falcon, or things like that, through when they change it from 4 issues in the middle of the run and then change it back when they decided that was enough of that. And so we didn't follow along this time. We thought that they'd get sick of it because, if nothing else, they probably would restart the series another 5 times. I mean, we're only on the 9th series of Aquaman after all. But no, they have waited us out. And so we've officially decided, after 6 months of them soliciting or shipping books labeled Emperor Aquaman and New Titans, that we have officially swapped the titles. So does that suck? Yes, that sucks, and we apologize for that. But there is good news about this one, because we've actually come up with a feature to make it suck less. And that is, when you download an update, if you say, go down to internet, say check for updates, I'll go and do one right now. This is fascinating TV. No, I don't want that one right now. Okay, I just screwed up my own update. Excellent. My own demo. So I'll just tell you what it is, because I don't want to download the program update just this moment. But when you check for updates, down at the bottom of the update dialog, the one that you're not seeing because I didn't download the program update just now, is an option that says, do you want to automatically match, resolve unknown issues? Click that and say yes, because what that will do is anything that has a known barcode, if it's switched designations, it'll automatically put it in the right place. And that takes care of most of the scut work about resolving things. If you ever got like an unknown items report, things that are older that don't have barcodes, we can't do as good a job on that one. But these ones all well into the barcode era. And so all you have to do is download the update, and you still get them listed as they shuffled around this month, but then they automatically get put under the right titles next month. You don't have to do a thing. So that's the good news on this one. And if you're running any ComicBase from the last 2 or 3 years, it's got that feature. So give that a shot. And thank you, DC. You deked us out. You ran one past the goal on us on that one. Sorry, don't mean to be, if you've been following the soccer match and you're a little bitter about, England, America's lost to Belgium the other day, I don't mean to rub salt. All right, so going on, let me get my stuff back up here so I can see what I'm doing as we go. Brian C says, howdy from Texas. Excellent. And this is never a horrible show. Clearly you haven't watched all of them. All right, so let's see, are there any other major news before we get into it? No, let's get into what's new with ComicBase now. All right, so we are currently on build number, I believe, 4692, might be 94. If you can download that right now, that's the one I just didn't download myself just now. There are some really cool things that we sort of slipped in the last, week or two, very, very quietly. We did a further refinement on our year's published cleanups, so that we actually derived them out of the, if you're looking at, it's say Aquaman 9th series, it used to say 2026 to present. And as soon as we push this week's update, where it's clear that, it just ended, it will just say through 2026. But it's very often when you're looking at a title for it to say, like, yeah, this is Aquaman 5th series or something, and it went from 1992 to 1994, and that gets off, or it gets stale, or people don't remember to update it. We have it actually now, so it automatically updates from the cover dates of all the items that are in it right now. And we managed to tighten up some of the ranging on that one, so it's even a little bit better than it was last week. So that's pretty cool, and it makes it a lot easier to find titles. If you can just see which title are we talking about when we're talking about, is that the 4th series of New Titans, or of Teen Titans, or the 5th series, and so forth. Somebody called out, and thank you. I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name, but thank you for pointing this out. In certain circumstances, there was a general rule we had with updates that if the new data is blank, that it wouldn't override the data, even if that was the official data. So let's say that we had a inker. You would put an inker in as Bob Schmob, but you had never submitted as a correction. Shame on you. But our inker still was nothing, because we hadn't put that in. In certain circumstances, if you had it set to replace data with the official data, it would actually wipe out your Bob Schmob credit for him and put in our blank, because that was the official line. It no longer does that in any circumstance, regardless of options right now. So thank you for the person who pointed that out. We got that in. We also did some improvements to how logging works in all the programs. So if anything ever goes wrong or weird or whatever else with you in ComicBase, if it ever throws an error, we will actually now keep log files that you can send to us for diagnosis. Those are now kept in your C ComicBase logs folder. And while we're speaking of that, we fixed a couple of just little futzy things that just it never was a big enough deal to get into before, but we did take care of them. If you ever want to rename a title, like I don't know, New Titans, and you want to make it New Titans exclamation point, there used to be a kind of a subtle limitation of the renaming, where if the title you were going to rename it to was different than the title was called, but when it was computing its alphabetical sort key. So for instance, New Titans and New Titans exclamation point, all they look different, but they all sort the same because the punctuation doesn't count for the sort, in terms of the sorting. It would actually give you static about that. It would say, well, you can't do that because there's already a title called New Titans here. You can't call it New Titans exclamation point. We've now worked around this. That's now not a thing. The thing about this one, it's funny because it's such a subtle bug. It bites nobody ever except the people at ComicBase who are entering things and doing subtle things once every 6 months. So it's been a bug in the program basically since there'd been a ComicBase, and we finally put that one to bed because it just pissed us off at exactly the right moment for us to say, you know what, screw it, we're not playing this game anymore. And now that bug is now dead. Things you also might care about if you're one of our top correctors. So there's a special secret feature which is only available to the top two. You have to be on the leaderboard for top submitters in ComicBase. So I think it's like the top 200 or 250 people who have ever sent data in ComicBase. We gave you a special feature which is only for you. It's called Submit All. So when you're doing corrections, like let's say you're putting in all the pages, page counts for all of, I don't know, New Titans second series, you might forget to hit submit corrected issues for that, or maybe you put in Bob Schmob, the inker, and you forgot to send that in. Well, we added a feature so that if you're one of our top 250 guys, you don't need to remember to send it in. You can just kind of get around to it later and say, oh yeah, everything I've been editing for the last week or so, just submit everything that's changed. And thank you. This is one for Robbie called this one out and got my head thinking on it. He was mentioned that, yeah, I did that, but when I said submit all, it sent more stuff than I thought I changed. And there was some ambiguity about, like, well, maybe it was because it went and checked your picture date and stuff like that. And that is actually a thing that will change in your database. But he was getting more than that would explain. So I looked into it, and it turns out there was actually kind of a cool problem on that one, is that it resets the date for when you submitted things to either when you submitted all last time, it's not going to send us the same things twice in a row, or when you downloaded an update. And as I was telling him that, I don't want to get my, if you download an update, I don't want you to submit all and send us all our own changes back to us again as corrections. And I thought, oh yeah, because I made sure that we zero that out every time you download an update. But I thought, but it doesn't zero out based on when you download the update. It zeroes out based on when you download the content for the update, not from when you downloaded the pictures. And I think because we pushed just an enormous number of pictures last month, it really showed up. Not last month, last week, where as it was downloading the pictures for him, it was updating the dates published, or the date, the data on those pictures in his database. And so those things would look like changed rows, and he'd submit the same stuff back to us again. Anyway, that is now tightened up. Love these subtle bugs. And I love also that when we actually fix one of these subtle bugs, it means that our correction processing counter, doesn't have to automatically scroll past two things that are exactly the same as what's on our master database. So that one just got fixed. And then one final thing, is we did find, if you've ever been working with ComicBase, doing data entry and gotten, just as you're editing issues, if you've gotten a database is locked message, we did find one possible cause of that, and we got rid of that. So if that bit you, hopefully it will not bite you anymore, and so that's a thing. So, all right, so that is it. Tyler T is chiming in, says, hi all from hot, sticky Albany, New York. And Agent Camp says, will it keep the same barcode as the ID label? What, keep the same barcode as the ID label? Sorry. Excuse me. Okay, so I think what he's asking is, if you've got, say, Aquaman ninth series number 28 or whatever it was, and it becomes Emperor Aquaman number 28, will it keep the same barcode? The same barcode will still get you there if you print out your own barcodes, because if you've ever print out custom barcodes on your ComicBase, what that barcode that's printed on the label is actually the ID for that row in the database itself. And so even when you switch which title that's associated with, it's actually the same record. And so it will actually move it over there, and the same barcode will take you to the renamed title. So that's a thing. So you don't need to reprint your labels. So that's cool. All right, man, and my voice is just going. But anyway, so you sit there and say, wow, that is a motley assortment of very strange fixes, Bickford. What is that all you've been up to for the last 2 weeks? And the answer is, of course, no, because some things happened in recent weeks. Honestly, a member of my family had their password hacked. They basically got phished. If you guys know what a spear phishing attack is. So phishing is all those guys who sit there and send you emails every day saying, yes, your, I think I got about 20 of them today. It's like, yes, your Best Buy Norton antivirus package has now been successfully charged, and it's only $590 and it renews annually. Thank you for your business. Oh, that's not your thing? Click here and you can tell us that this was the wrong charge. And what they are hoping, of course, when they send you an email like that, is that you click there and say, I'm outraged. How could you charge me for this thing I never subscribed to? And they will say, oh, we are so sorry, sir. Please, let's have you log into your account, and then we'll get this straightened for you right away. And what they're doing there is they've pretended to be Best Buy. They've convinced you just signed up for the thing, and then when you fill in, log in to your Best Buy account, which is a fake page, what they're doing is they're capturing your user ID and password for Best Buy, at which point they will say, oh, sorry, we've got it resolved now. Thank you so much. Don't know how that happened. And then they can go to town with your Best Buy card, or if they had you type in your credit card to make sure it's the right credit card and we, get that straightened out for you, they've just stolen your credit card. That's regular old phishing, phishing. There's a worse version of it called spear phishing, which is, I'm not just going to send the same general announcement out to everyone. No, I'm going to send one out that's a little targeted towards you. Like, I don't know. Let's say it knows that let's say, I'm sure I probably said, showed at some point on the phone, I've got a Motorola Razr, right? So there you are, Motorola Razr 2025. So someone who wanted to go after me might say, I know how to get Bickford. I'm going to be from Motorola Security and say, did you know, we're informing all Motorola 2025 Razr users that there's a critical security vulnerability, and it's very important that you download the security patch right away. Here is the patch. And if they send that out to me, because they know my email, because I publish it every darn week, and here it is again on the show, P. Bickford, human-computing.com. Send those, send that spear phishing away. If you send that to me and you get me, because I'm an idiot right now, to click on that message and to convince me to download the firmware patch to fix my Motorola 2025 security vulnerability, I will suddenly discover that I've just installed something which probably takes over my phone and monitors all my keystrokes and, sends all my passwords and credit card information to, Scumbag Central. That's called spear phishing. So anyway, the problem, of course, is, look, I mean, it's one thing to laugh at this stuff when like we're all sharp and we've had a bunch of coffee and we're all cool. It's another one when like we just got off 4 different phone calls and we're busy and we're worried about our calendar and the meeting's in 5 minutes, and you get a message from Samsung Security saying, hey, that plan which you were just on, your card got declined, and so we're going to have to not send you the thing we were going to send you. And you're like, God, I just sent that in. Yeah, okay. And you click on the link, and it sure looks like it's from Samsung. And you go and you thumb through, and you very quickly fill out the thing you thought you were going to fill out. And before you know it, something just feels a little off. And 20 minutes later, you realize, oh my God, I just gave out my credentials to my Samsung account, which, by the way, is also the same as my email account, which, oh my God, that was my email account. Because, as we all know, the forgot password link for everything on the planet is your email account. And so if they have the passwords to your email account, they basically can go to anything you've ever done say forgot password, and have a code sent to themselves, at which point they can change your password, own your account, and your life becomes an absolute misery. Anyway, something like that happened to a family member of mine, and it's a crappy way to spend a Saturday, changing every password, credit card, ID in your known universe, and so forth. And another member of my family is getting to the point where she's just absolutely overwhelmed, as we all are, about how many damn passwords there are in our lives. And it got me thinking, is there not a better way? And I just had a little bit of time on my hands, and I finally had a chance to pursue something that I've really wanted to do. And so we actually, over the last 3 weeks, got a chance to do something about that. And so I will tell you all about it. But before we do that, let me get out my media pool, because we're going to play a little bit of a game. So let's see here, media pool, which I've conveniently put behind everything else. Okay, yes, and I call this one to start with, yes, passwords are a problem. All right, so if you guys would like to venture a guess, so there's a password manager called NordPass, which keeps track of passwords for people. And one of the things that they will actually publish once in a while is what are the most common passwords that are used in the world. Well, let's go ahead and play the game. And as luck would have it, I think looks like I've gotten one of my slides not decked out on cue. Oh, I feel terrible about this. So starting with number one, I believe password. No, do I just have the same? Yeah, I have the same slide in here twice. Damn it! So close. I was so close to having show perfection, but I let it go. I'm not going to get caught up, and I'm just going to go on with the show. All right, so we're going to pretend number 5 is already taken. Number 4, most common top passwords in the world. Number 5 most used password in the world is 12345. The number 4 most used password in the world is 123456789. Anyone want to guess what the third most commonly used password in the world is? Yes, 123456788. But now, stunner, are you ready for number 2? The number 2 most used password in the world is admin. Now, if you thought it was password, I think that's number 8, but we're just doing the top 5 for today. But anyway, let's do the number 1 most commonly used password in the world as of 2026. Latest report is the relatively secure 123456. Now, I say it's relatively secure because you're using 6 characters, and we all know that the longer the password, the more secure it is. So 123456, obviously much more secure than number 5. But yeah, this is ridiculous. We all know this is ridiculous. Why the hell do we do this? I mean, it's not like passwords were invented yesterday. It's not like we're dummies. Look, part of it is we're annoyed. I mean, who the hell wants to enter yet another password to yet another site? I mean, every time you go and you want to look at a pair of sneakers, or you want to buy a particular type of confection. I was looking for cake sprinkles one day. My wife was having a special anniversary type thing, and for some reason the colors that were chosen were red and gold. And so I'm like, okay, I'm the cake decorator guy in my house. I need red and gold sprinkles for sugar to crust the thing I'm making, and I didn't have any. I didn't want to go shopping. Fine, I will look for these online. It's some cake supply house I'd never dealt with before, and what do they want? Yeah, another password. So yay, another password in my life. Now, I didn't fill it out as 12345 or even the relatively secure 1234556, but it's a nightmare, and we all get the point where we just can't cope anymore. Now, we actually make this even worse on ourselves, where we don't just make it so that we have a million sites with a million requirements and everything else in our life, but we also have password length requirements. That's how we get to the 1234556, because now most sites will require your password be at least 5 characters long because of security. And most people seeing this say, okay, I got it. 123456 sounds perfectly fine. I guess if you wanted 7 or 8 characters, I guess password also works, but a lot of times they make you put at least 1 digit in. So that's why people put the 1234556 in there. But this is obviously stupid. It's sometimes look, do I care if my account at the cake sprinkle place got hacked? Maybe I don't. Once upon a time, I used to have what I thought was low security passwords, and they were the ones I just I do not give a crap. I will never visit your site again. This is a one-time deal. I just wanted to look up a thing, right? And you made me create an account to do that, and so I made a password, which is just it was nonsense. Anyway, to nobody's surprise, that thing was hacked instantly, but I didn't care because I was never going to be on the site, and there's nothing confidential about it. It just made me log in. But we all do this thing. We all have a million passwords, and the other problem we've got is we're forced to have them be a certain amount of secure. Now, a lot of things aren't throwaway. A lot of the times we have things we care about, like our banking information, or I don't know, sales I'm buying on Atomic Avenue or ComicBase, or things like, your credit card numbers involved with a lot of this stuff. And so we are now given this wonderful choice. It goes something like this. All right. I could have two different ways of having a password. I could have a password that I'm going to remember, like Dodger, right? And I'll be clever here. I'll put a little 0 for the O for Dodger, right? The problem on this one is, like, I'm never going to forget it. It's Dodger, right? If I use Dodger as my password, that's going to be it. And honestly, my password for like the I don't give a crap sites back in the day, like 20 years ago, it was something almost as stupid as Dodger. The other one you get, and you always get this, issue to you whenever you say, hey, build me a strong password, is it'll give you something like the one on the right there. It's like, it's got a whole bunch of squiggly characters in it. It's got, it's impossible to remember. It's like 3 tilde, X, lowercase z, uppercase V, whatever else. It takes 100 years to type this thing in. It's an absolute nightmare. Good news is it's kind of secure. Bad news is I will take 100 years to enter the thing. You can't even put it together in your head more than one character at a time. And half the time you're going to enter something wrong by the time you're done with it. And by the time you've entered that password in once, you're frustrated. By the time you enter it twice, you're absolutely homicidal, and you can't cope anymore. And so, but good news is it's secure, right? It means that you won't forget it. So, congratulations, we've done our deal as far as site security goes. Now, this one is kind of like your typical thing that most sites give us. We, being somewhat clever humans on the planet, have come up with a bunch of different ways around this one. I think one of the most interesting ones that's come up is the idea of get rid of passwords, right? Like the little squiggly 23 tilde X, backslash, 42 exclamation Z, how about something I can remember? And XKCD a while ago put together a really kind of famous one. And this goes around the idea of like a strong password has what's called a high degree of randomness, or a high degree of entropy built into it. And it turns out there's a better way than, like, okay, you could have a password like Troubadour23 or Digur97X14. You could do something like that, but it turns out if you do stuff like that, it's actually word for word not particularly efficient as far as being secure. It's really hard for you to remember all the little things that you umlauted or put the exclamation over, or the things like that. I mean, you'll mess those up constantly trying to come back up with it. But it's actually not particularly secure unless it's quite long as well. But there's a better way. It's called a passphrase. This one is drawing upon the idea of saying, all right, look, I'm not going to remember each individual weird letter as I go along the whole thing. But if you say something like, come up with 4 words that only a crazy person would put together. At that point, it turns out that you can actually, so you say like, correct staple horse brindle or something, or what was it? Correct horse battery staple, right? These do not appear in, they are all dictionary words, correct horse battery staple, right? They don't make any sense together. So you're not going to find them in any kind of order together. But it turns out by typing correct horse battery staple, you've got, as it turns out, some crazy amount of entropy built into the whole thing, where just brute forcing this password would take, like years and years and years and years, as compared to the complicated looking one with the Troubadour, 13 exclamation, whatever thing. That one actually you can brute force. Brute force just means guess as many different variations as fast as you can. As in your computer can often do many times per second. It can brute force these things. The second one is actually quite a bit more secure in terms of resisting brute force, attacks. Now, to be truly to hit the level of entropy that, hits, this example is probably about 15, 20 years old. And also, by the way, correct horse battery staple has actually become such a meme. Do not use correct horse battery staple as your password, because that's actually something that will appear in dictionaries now, as it's almost as famous as password. But if you just sit there and say, like, I don't know, I'm just name random objects, camera, camera, monitor, barcode, speaker, painting, right? I'm just took the first 5 things I looked at in the whole thing. Camera, monitor, reasonably, quick to type, reasonably quick to remember, a decent amount of entropy. It's a long enough password, and it's random enough, and it's going to resist dictionary attacks on the whole thing. Especially if you don't know, like, if, let's say, you don't put spaces between them all, right? So they don't necessarily look like words. It winds up being, like, not bad. Problem is, even then, I still got 500 sites I got to remember the password for, so it doesn't really solve all my problem. One thing that I played around with, I had swapped password managers recently. I'll get to that in a minute, but I found out, if you're trying to maximize your levels of entropy and minimize your amount of typing, and this really matters if you're having to enter passwords in on a TV remote control, where entering every password takes like 100 years to go up, down, sideways on that little TV remote thing. So short and still hard to brute force matters if you ever have to set that kind of password. Turns out, one way you can, like, make this much better is, I call it Rumpelstiltskinning the password. So instead of coming with just rando symbols, just completely randomly distributed on the whole thing, all sorts of uppercase, lowercase, switch the keyboard to the numeric thing, back to the lowercase thing, up to the uppercase one, just make up words that sound like spells from, like, I don't know, some like a bad fantasy novel, like Glortstip Mitterflop, they're not words, right? It turns out Glortstip Mitterflop is also got an incredibly high level of entropy built in, with less words, less typing than anything that you would find in a dictionary, because as soon as you've got a dictionary word in the whole thing, it's easier, for an attack based on dictionaries to guess, because it just runs through all the words in random sequences. But if you say Glortstip Mitterflop, you can actually get to a level of strength on the pure password itself that is about as good as, like, a 24 character crazed rando thing. The problem is, I actually have a chance in hell of being able to remember Glortstip Mitterflop, at the very least, if I've just changed the email password to support@comicbase.com to Glortstip Mitterflop, and I tell our support guys, hey, make sure you go into your Outlook, because I need to update the password. We just changed all the passwords as part of a big security hardening. The first time out, had made the mistake of saying, okay, here's the big random 1,000,000 character long password, and I was on the phone with our support guy for like 5 minutes, just relating the password and having it read him back to me. If I'd said, yeah, okay, the password is Glortstip Mitterflop, which, by the way, it's not Glortstip Mitterflop. I just made that up, and that's kind of the point. But I could have communicated the whole thing. He would have been like, Glortstip Mitterflop? Or is that Glortstip with 2 P's or 1? I would have clarified, like, one thing to him, and he would have been on his way. And it actually is kind of a, if you got to choose random strong passwords for whatever reason, not a bad way to go, all things considered. But you still got a problem. And the problem is, you got 1,000,000 sites. And so you wind up being this guy. You wind up being one guy who's got 50 passwords, and you're like the janitor with all the chain full of keys. That's not the guy that you ever went to school and said, I want to be that guy. No, you sit there and say, okay, let's see, what was the password for ComicBase.com? What was the password for my candy sugars for baking.com? And you're going around all day long, and you've either got a little book that you keep around you, maybe you've got a password manager, maybe you've got whatever you use to keep track of this thing, but you've got 1,000,000 problems on your hands because there's 1,000,000 websites. And unless you do the dumb thing, which is, to sit there and say, like, okay, I'm gonna, have the really easy one where I just use Dodger all the time, you got a real problem on your hands. So what happens? Well, most normal people do some version of this, is they use the same password for lots and lots of sites. They're like, like I used to once upon a time say, look, all right, I got my high security password, which I use for banking things. I got kind of like my mid security passwords. I got 4 or 5 of those I can kind of remember. And I got the I don't give a crap passwords. And then I discovered one day a lovely site called Have I Been Pwned? Pwned is geek speak for have I been attacked and taken over? Pwned. You pwn the noobs, man. That's what you do. And anyway, it turns out that my BS password that I put on my super cakesprinkles.com, that one had of course been hacked. And I was like, I didn't give a crap whether that had been hacked. And then a year or two later, suddenly one of my mid-security passwords started appearing on Have I Been Pwned? It's like, oh, wait a minute. I didn't want that one to get hacked. That was not my throwaway password. That's one I used for entering like the McDonald's, Monopoly game or something I cared about. And then as years go by, other passwords appear on there. And suddenly you're thinking, oh, hey, have about 5 or 6 passwords in your life and just reuse them for different types and only keep like 1 or 2 super secret ones yourself. That's a crappy strategy. Now, how did those other passwords get leaked? I didn't tell anyone. And the way they get leaked, honestly, is if I'm going to log into 500 or 600 sites, and if I keep now in a password manager for reasons that hopefully are getting obvious. If I'm going to have 500 or 600 sites that I have ever logged into, or names and user credentials I've ever need to remember, eventually someone who runs that site is not going to do a particularly zealous job of guarding the credentials. I mean, there used to be, like back in the old days, I'm actually old enough to remember. By the way, if any of you guys did that during the bicentennial, or I'm sorry, the semi-quincentennial, I believe I think I said that right, semi-quincentennial, which is what we just had, the 250th anniversary of America. I actually am one of those guys who's old enough to remember the bicentennial, and yeah, it was pretty lit. And I hope your semi-quincentennial was also lit. But anyway, but yeah, no, I'm old enough to remember, for instance, like when passwords were stored as passwords, like you would actually have like a secret vault on someone's drive where, I'd say my password is Digger with a 0 for the O because I'm clever. And somewhere on a database they would be a password that said Digger with a 0 for the O. Now, later on, you did a thing where you would encrypt that thing. You would, you would store Zirkel flops, which then, if you ran it through the appropriate decryptor, would turn into Digger. These days, there's actually the way that passwords are typically held. They don't even encrypt them because if you knew the encryption key, you would know everyone's password. There's a better way of doing it. You store it in what's called a password hash, which is, imagine those codes you used to make up with a kid. If you had ever had cipher books as a child, but you could make up the most preposterous encoding algorithms to figure out, like, what's your secret name? All right, well, your secret name is, let's see, it's the first letter of your last name followed by the second letter of your middle name followed by the number of pets you own, followed by, you could make up rules like that out of the raw stuff, and it would translate into some other thing. And the cool thing about password hashes, and they're a bit more serious than that, but only a bit, is they're very quick to compute. And if I had a password like Digger, it might come up as something like Zerkstenfleckel, right? But the one thing you can't do is you can't say, all right, let me run it in reverse. And if I ran it in reverse, I don't get Dodger. There's no such thing as running it in reverse. You can only run a hash forward. And so what you do with a password hash, which is the way these things are stored in the modern world, is when you record a password, it runs it through a hashing algorithm. It runs it through all these little mathematical bits to come up with a string of random looking crap. And then when you log in again, it says, all right, type in that thing you've got. And if you type in something where if it runs it through the same kind of random looking operations, will become the same random looking crap. And they say, this random crap matches that random crap. It's a match. You must have typed in the right thing. But the advantage of a password hash as opposed to an encrypted password is even if you know the secrets, even if all the code has been leaked, I can't take a database full of old passwords, run it in reverse, and tell you what your original password was. It doesn't work. And as a result, because the next guy on the next site will probably use a different hashing algorithm, or their hashing algorithm is seeded to a different processor, which had a different time clock at the time when they started instantiating it. One leak of one password doesn't give it up to everyone else in the world. But with that said, clearly over all the time that I've been using passwords and things like that, yeah, I've apparently used it on enough systems that got hacked, or they sold off their assets and their database got sold, and someone opened up the hard drive that used to belong to the company that went bankrupt and said, "Oh, look, what a lovely customer database here. I wonder what's in it." Dumped out all the passwords and everything, and over time, out of all the things that could ever happen to all the sites in the world, your passwords just kind of start appearing in the wild. And have I been pwned? Decent site to look for. It says like, yeah, have your credentials ever been out there in the wild? And if so, change the damn credentials. But it's a real problem. And it also, you've got a problem of how do I know, am I talking to the right guy? Have I, it's for instance, what happens with like the spear phishing attacks when it looks like I'm making sure to cancel my Norton subscription off Best Buy, but it turns out the page that looks exactly like Best Buy's login page is secretly another guy's page, and I'm really typing into his password interception routine. I'm not typing into that. There's all sorts of scams there, which especially when you're tired, when you're not looking at the email too closely, when you're not noticing that it was sent from a guy that, yeah, it looks like their typography, but if I hover over the email address, oh, wait, that's not bestbuy.com, that's something else. All sorts of ways they can trick you into this sort of thing. And and then you just got the sheer overload factor. So what the hell are we supposed to do about this? I mean, are we just doomed? I mean, it's a decent question. And the answer is no, because there's a better way. Passwords got to go. I mean, we're up to our eyeballs with them. We can't do anymore. The best you can do probably is use what's called a password manager. And I hope you're all doing this right now. Please, for the love of all that is holy, if you are still one of those guys who uses the same password everywhere, stop. You've got to stop. Every time you log into a new site, if you're on a Mac, if you're on a PC, or if you're on a Android phone, if you're on an iOS phone, whatever the thing is, there's software built into your phone that will automatically generate a password for you and just say, look, I will make some glorple flop type stuff for you right now, and you will never have to remember it yourself. So, yes, you could go and look at my list of passwords and type it and do things like that, but you never have to do that, because as soon as you're logged into your Android device or your iPhone or whatever the thing is, as soon as you logged in and it knows who you are, it also knows you're entitled to get to all the passwords it's ever recorded. And it probably did that using like either your login, your touch, maybe the one password that the Windows computer or your iPhone ever asks you if you like do a cold restart. That that one little passcode, it knows who you are for sure, which means you're entitled to open up any of the passwords that it's saved in their thing. And because you're using iCloud or because you're using Google Passwords, it's keeping them synced across all your devices. You don't need to remember a thing. Most importantly, you should never be typing that password except the very first time when it says, hey, you want to create a nice, strong, secure password? You say yes. It makes some thing that's full of crap that you will never want to type again, and it will autofill it for you. And so you never actually will type it. And then, importantly, it will remember it for you. So that the next time you go to that site, and only that site, because these things are also pretty smart, is they know to say, hey, I'm only going to offer the site up if it looks like I'm really talking to bestbuy.com, the official site, not myhacker.bestbuy.com, the fake site. It will say, I don't actually recognize this guy. Are you sure he should see the password? You guys, if you use password managers, you've probably done that. But the number one thing is, please do not reuse passwords, because if you do that, you're at the mercy of the weakest password you've ever used on the weakest site you've ever been to. And at that point, if that password is used for anything else in your life, people will just go through, and we see this in the logs that hit our servers all the time. is they'll say, okay, you're clearly at comicbase.com or humancomputing.com, and they will just run dictionaries full of people's names who've never existed. Bill, at comicbase.com, Dave at comicbase.com, Manuel at comicbase.com, and they will try just dictionaries full of attacks until our software shuts them down and says, yeah, give it up, loser. It's not going to ever happen for you. But if you ever had a name that was out in the world and they've got a list of all the passwords that have been hacked in the whole thing, yeah, trust me, there's some 13-year-old kid in Pakistan who is right now sitting there feeling like he is Mr. Elite Hackers, running your name through all the credentials on all these things and hoping to get lucky. Don't let that guy be you. So if you're still reusing passwords, for the love of God, stop. Make it so you have a new unique password on every site. And honestly, you shouldn't be trying to remember these passwords. Don't make them memorable. Don't make them anything, because you should never be telling anyone. You should just be pulling up your password manager and letting it autocomplete for you. The one exception I would say is if it turns out it's the kind of password you need to actually tell somebody, like over the phone, yeah, I'm going to say the gizzle flop thing is way less painful over the phone if I do got to tell somebody else the password than, like a coworker, I'm going to give it to someone's going to take over some part of my job for me while I'm, off vacationing or something. That's a lot less painful than having to, relate, one of those squiggle, 47 characters of, upper ASCII, those things. But in general, yes, just be using that. Now, this means that in your life, you should be trying to remember one password. So that's it. You ought to remember the password that gets you onto your Mac or onto your iPhone or onto your password manager or whatever else. But try to get your life down so there's one password you remember and everything else is just garbage or, nonsense gibberish stored in a vault somewhere. That is the best you can do under the current regime of passwords. Okay. But there's a better way even than that, right? And that introduces the whole thing that we just did over the whole time. And it's a thing called not passphrases, not passwords. Yes, pass keys. And let me go ahead and get a slide up here because I have a cool slide for that one. And it helps if I put it on screen too. So pass keys do the amazing thing. They're secure. They can't be intercepted. They can't be phished. They're easy to remember. You can reuse them all day long with your heart's content with almost no security implications whatsoever. They don't drive you crazy, and your security is freaking airtight. How the hell does that work, you say? It works using a principle, it's called two-factor authentication. It's a couple of guys, Diffie, and I always forget the second guy's name, came up with it. Absolutely freaking genius. And it works kind of like this. The idea is that there's a thing you've got and a thing you have that, between the two of those things, they confirm who your identity is, and they also never leave your possession. So there's nothing to be intercepted. And so it basically goes like this. So the metaphor I'm going to come up with, it's a bit tortured. Honestly, I've thought for days on this one. It's the best I've got. So work with it for me. I'm even going to put myself off the screen here just so you can see. But imagine it goes like this. I'm an ancient Egyptian, and I've gone to the royal bank of Cairo, and I've opened an account, and because they're lovely folks and we're very traditional, they decided that when I open an account and they figure out who I am, and I show them all the scholarly documents indicating exactly who I am, and they allow me to open an account, they say, okay, great, excellent. We're going to make sure now that we know who you are when you come back here, and so what I want you to do is you are going to take your signet ring. You walked into the bank and you have an elaborate signet ring, and I want you to, I'm going to show you a piece of wet clay where I've shown the seal of the Royal Bank of Thebes, of Cairo. I've burned it into this, this wet, tablet of clay. So it's exactly from us. You recognize, everyone in the city knows that this is from us. We have a very well-known, trademark. It couldn't be anyone else, and for sure it's not us because you also, this thing has been stamped with the signet ring, which is held under glass in the hall of the Great Bank of Cairo. But on the back of this thing, the great mark of the Bank of Thieves has been stomped in the back. So you know absolutely for sure the guys who are asking you to stick your signet ring here are definitely the Great Bank of Cairo. So you then stick your signet ring into the bank of the Great Bank of Cairo. And they say, terrific, great, we got it. And then they say, all right, we've got that. We're going to keep that on file. Doesn't matter if anyone else looks at the fingerprint card that we just kept on file. It doesn't matter that the bank of the Great Bank, the seal of the Great Bank of Cairo is well known, and we keep it in the hall just so everyone knows who we're talking about here. These are not secrets. These are what's called the public face of the encryption. What matters is that when you come back later on, you stuck a bunch of money in our vault and you want to come back and get it, we're once again going to show you a great big, I think I have a slide for this one too. We're once again going to show you another thing of clay, and it's going to have our signature in the back of it, so you know it's from us. It couldn't be from anyone else. No one else could have made that mark, and anyone would recognize it anywhere. Again, it's advertised far and wide. And then when you go in with your signet ring, which never leaves your wrist, you never gave us the signet ring. You actually could take this thing out. You could keep the signet ring if you want to. And this is actually, if you want to make the metaphor really accurate, the way it works is the signet ring itself. You don't wear it all the time. You're not that kind of guy. A lot of jewelry looks flashy on a guy. You would not be that guy. No, I keep my signet ring in a little vault. Keep it. It's like one of those little thumbprint safes that you keep in your desk, right? All I got to do is keep it away from the kids. Maybe I put a little 4-digit code on it, but that's where I keep my little signet ring. And every time I want to go and I want to do business with the Great Bank of Thieves, I go to my local vault there, I punch in my 4-digit passcode, retrieve the ring, and I walk down and I stamp their little document, and then they compare it to the one on file, and they know for damn sure it was me. I'm the only guy who could have made that mark. I know for damn sure it was them. They're the only guy who could have presented that mark to me, and I would have recognized in a heartbeat if it wasn't. Matter of fact, there's a security feature built into the ring that wouldn't allow me to stick into it if it didn't work. But that's actually pretty damn close to describing how pass keys work. Is you've actually all I had to remember to use the thing was the little 4-digit code I keep in my safe, or maybe I just put my fingerprint up on it and it unlocks the whole thing. And then I can go and sign everyone I've ever dealt biz with that ever has my stuff on file. All that perfect trust is established between the two of us. I didn't have to remember anything. And the important part is, like, my 4-digit code, I never told anyone. My fingerprint, I never told anyone. That traveled nowhere, never went out over the wire. No one observed me doing it. It wouldn't matter if they did. But it never went anywhere at all. Because there's no password involved, all that you've got is this match between two things that could only have come from the people that they came from, and which only make that mark, when the two things are put together. Because you've got that, you've got basically unbreakable security without all the mental load. Now, the thing everyone wonders is like, well, okay, so you got it down. So I don't, instead of having to remember, a 17-character password, things like that, I only got to remember like a 4-character password or something. All right, well, okay, but I got to remember different for each site, right? No, it doesn't matter. Not really. Because honestly, the little code that you put in there, the I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's just there to keep someone who broke into your house or the kids or whatever else from going in there and accessing your private key or your signet ring. As long as it's safe enough from the kids, which presumably you got a house, you got other things that would keep them from getting in. It's not on the internet. You don't have to worry about people you don't have to worry about people in the outside world trying to attack you. They can't get to this whole thing. The only thing you have to remember is people who actually have access to the physical thing that we're talking about. So in other words, if someone stole your phone, that's like the real equivalent to where you talk about like the vault with the signet ring in it. The way this works for real, and we do this dozens of times a day, is like if I were to start my phone up there, it would say things like like for instance, I'm doing a thing right now where if you could have the thing where like you wave it in front of your face and it says, well, do you look like you? Other times now, I don't do that one because my kids are actually malicious enough that they might actually print out a picture of me looking like a complete idiot, wave it in front of the phone sensor and say like, I got Dad's phone. That's my kids, right? But No, but in general, what they will do is they'll say, all right, look, anytime you want to get to something secure like Robinhood or whatever else, like, yeah, here, touch this fingerprint sensor on the side here, right there. And we will look at your fingerprint. We don't store the fingerprint thing, but we've made like kind of like a little biometric identifier out of the ridges and everything. We compare it against the one that's stored in the vault, right? And the vault is actually in the phone. It's in a protected bit of memory inside here, and the memory is tiny. It's less than 2K, not 2 megs, 2K. And it stores that memory in an encrypted format permanently. It's not going anywhere. You could recycle your phone a million times. But that secret, the one secret here, which is going to remember, which is your own biometrics, that gets stored right there. All you got to do is touch it. It says, oh, okay, he's done the little touch thing. I will now open the vault, retrieve the secret key, which is that secret stored in the vault. You know, the random number I made when I created the password the first time. I will transmit it only to the site that I know this thing was associated with, and they'll look at it. They'll say, yep, this thing matches, and I'm good. So we do this all day long on our phones. We do it if you have a Mac or a PC, something like that, with a touch sensor. That's what that's doing. If you guys have ever done the thing where, like Windows, when they had Windows 11, they made a big deal about like, hey, want to make your account much more secure and everything. And this is a really counterintuitive thing to do. Is they say, well, instead of that hard to use password that you use every time you log in, Bigford, global snort frapjoy 14. Instead of typing that all the time, you could type in like, I don't know, like 5678, and you'll be more secure. And I'm like, yeah, sure, I will. Turns out, no, it really is. Because again, as long as nobody else in your household is feeling puckish and they don't walk up to your computer and type in 5678, then that secret will never leave the internet. I'm sorry, it never leaves your computer as it gets matched together. And the composite thing between your secret thing and their site, it gets put together. The actual secret thing never goes across the wire, and so it can never be cloned. It can never be stolen. And it actually does work. If you guys ever have like iPads or MacBooks or things like that where you're typing in a 4-digit code, same deal. The actual secret, you guys remember Windows 11, how popular the damn thing was? Because you had to have a thing on it called a TPM 2.0 chip. And I had a graphic of, but I've run out of space in my media bay to show it. Basically, somewhere on your computer's motherboard is a tiny, tiny little chip, and it stores like 2K of static RAM. Really tiny. Now, this is the kind of thing that would not have been exciting back in 1980 in the Apple II days. But what this thing does is it's an area of RAM that nothing is allowed to talk to. It's encrypted. You could get in there, and lose any memory tool on the planet, and you're never going to see what you want to see. Is always encrypted, and it's held at a level before the operating system even boots. So that's how they get secure boot to happen, or BitLocker. Before the operating system even boots, it has figured out where the credentials are. It's stored the credentials, and so you're not allowed to boot even unless the credentials read properly. And that's before any operating system. So you can't even write a virus that runs at boot time to get in there. So it's really freaking secure. It's really a good way to go. And the nice thing is something like that is built into every phone, every iPad, every computer, everything modern in your world right now. And so that's why suddenly this thing called passkeys is a thing that can actually work. All right, so look, I've been talking about the whole things. They are pretty damned excellent. It is the solution. I'm going to cap it off by saying, yeah, it's like, we talked about passwords are a problem. I'm going to key it off, and I'm just going to say, look, in this modern world, they're not just a problem, they are the enemy. And the really secure way to go is just get rid of the password altogether. You can't steal something that was never a lock that was out there in the world for you to steal. If it's based only on like your variable identity as you and something which only you have and no one else on the planet has, then that you kind of can't beat that one in terms of security. But, and you knew there was a but, there's one problem with the whole thing. So every security chain is only as strong as its weakest link, right? Now, a lot of times the weakest link is us, because we're reusing passwords, we're forgetting things, we're doing things like that, we're writing the password underneath our desk, we're doing all the things, right? The problem, the weak link on all this one here is, so we've got this impenetrable bank vault of the passkey, right? Again, the Great Bank of Cairo is like, no one's getting in there without your thing. But you'll notice that in most things that have humans involved, right next to the Great Bank of Cairo, you have this situation. You got your email and a little button marked forgot password. So what happens when you say forgot password? Well, for customers that don't, for companies that don't want to lose their customers, they usually do a couple things. They send you an SMS message on the phone that you're registered with them. Well, SMS message, that's pretty good, right? Nothing wrong with that, except you can clone people's SMS cards. Conservative commentator Matt Walsh famously had his whole life turned upside down because someone cloned his SIM. At that point, they basically owned all his accounts because that was the login for everything he was doing at that point. Because it's only back in the day, it was always like, well, okay, can't get in your account here. We'll send you a text message. Just put in the 4 digits we sent you, and then we've got it. Well, those 4 digits were going to someone else on a phone that looked like his but wasn't, and that's a problem. Now, funny thing is, even if I clone the SIM card, I didn't get the trusted memory. It's in the TPM unit. So this kind of thing doesn't work with passkeys, but the forgot password link is a real problem. All right, so okay, so what about that? Sometimes they have authenticator apps. Authenticator apps kind of have the same problem. There's an attack called they're very politically correct in security circles these days. It used to be called man-in-the-middle attackers, but now it's called attacker in the middle. But basically, it's something that it's called a reverse proxy and pretend to be Best Buy or pretend to be Norton, things like that. And so when you think you're logging into and sending your security credentials to bestbuy.com, you're really talking to these other guys, and you can't see the security certificate right there. It's opaque to you, and so you go and you punch in the code it just sent you off your authenticator, and then it goes and relays it as if you were them to get into your account using that. So authenticators, it seems like they're better than SMS. Really not. And then the biggest one that we all have, and this is how I believe my sister got hacked, is we all have the thing open where like, yeah, email. Okay, so we went through all this elaborate ceremony to like make everything completely safe, but we've got something that we're like, oh, that didn't work. Well, click here. We'll send you an email with a reset link. Click on that. You can reset your password and it'd be anything you want. So all this means is that at the end of the day, we got rid of all the passwords. Passwords are the enemy, but we left one password left in our life. What was that password? It was my email password. So what do we do? There is a solution, and I hinted at it before, kind of talked to it a bit. And you'll also, if you use Apple or Android or things like that, it's kind of like living on your accounts these days too, because they are keenly aware about this problem and they want to solve it for you before you even know what's going on. And that was that part where they're using Google passwords or iCloud passwords or password manager, things like that. You can use a password management program that has syncing. That's by all means, if you use KeyPass or anything like that, go for it. You can sync it on your Dropbox, things like that, and that will do some good for you. If you have any of the Android or Apple ecosystem devices, if you just use the default password managements on them, they get automatically synced between all the devices in your life. So whether it's your phone, your iPad, the next iPad you buy, whatever else, as soon as it knows exactly who you are, it'll say like, oh, hey, you want me to sync up your password vaults? And the answer is yes, I would love that, because then your new thing will get the same crypto keys that the old one had, even if your old phone got stolen, and you'll be able to get into your accounts again. And because your new guy, who stole your iPad or who stole your thing, presumably doesn't have your fingerprint, or he doesn't have that top secret 5678, serial number that he got off you, he still can't get in any of your stuff. But yes, we still have the problem where if you lose all your stuff, if you set up a passkey, Microsoft actually does something kind of miraculous if you do take them up on their job to say like, hey, don't use your password to log in anymore, use a passkey. If you actually do that, it actually will delete the password from your account. You will find out if you're using command line utilities, it is impossible to log in as yourself with a password. This messed me up as a programmer, because I'm sitting there going, wait, I'm logging in and I'm setting up my credentials to this command line utility, and I know my password, and the password doesn't get taken. It's like, oh, because you once upon a time set up a passkey, and because it knew that I had more than one passkey registered with them, it's like, It's safe to delete his password credentials. If you delete my password credentials, they can never be phished. No one can ever pretend to be me. I'm safe as houses, including I was also safe as houses from my own command line utility, so I had to get into it a different way. But yeah, you basically want to make the password go away, but you still want to give people a way of getting their pass key back. The main way that people do it is if you have more than one device in the same provider, especially Apple will always say things like, oh, well, we sent a code to that other device that we know you have registered. Go ahead and click on that one. And the 4-digit code they give you or the 2-digit code or whatever else, that's just again, to keep your kids away. It's not to keep an attacker away because it wouldn't have gone to their device unless they stole that device too. So but anyway, it's all relatively secure. And also at that point, it's Apple and Google who are the guys doing the heavy lifting to make sure that all the pass keys keep synced and that it all keeps, the whole thing, chugging along pretty well. It's not a bad trade. The one thing you want to do to not screw it up is, ironically, don't use, okay, fine point about Windows Hello. And that is, Windows Hello is the technology they've got for recognizing you by your finger, your little 4-digit code, your face, whatever else, if you've got a camera attached to your thing. Windows Hello, by default, stores that device in that trusted platform module on that one particular computer. It doesn't, by default, sync that with anything else. That's the downside of Windows Hello as is right now. Now, they're making some changes in it. Internet Explorer, I guess Internet Edge is what they're calling it. The latest version is starting. If I just made something in June, it starts syncing it to other devices. But that's a new thing from Microsoft. What I would say, though, is if you get a choice of having this stored in your Google Password Manager or your Apple Password Manager, those things automatically get synced. So even if your phone gets stolen, even if your device gets stolen, when you get your replacement one in there, you still have access to all your old passkeys. If you don't, most sites for the foreseeable future, and this includes ComicBase, are still going to let you get in with your password. So, okay, the cat door is still open next to the bank vault. We're trying to take down the grief, of the whole thing. But one day, and I got to tell you, this is our firm hope, and this comes on the back of the announcement I never quite got around to making, which is, yes, over the last 3 weeks, you'll notice if you went to log into ComicBase that it's offering you 2 different ways of logging in. One is via your old user ID and password, and the other one is say, hey, make this easier on yourself, make a passkey. I'm begging you all today, click that make a passkey thing. We renamed the login screen or sign-in screen. We can now call it sign-in and security. And there's an option there to make a passkey. And when you do that, it's basically going to, make you log in to make sure you are you. But more importantly, after that, it's going to do something that ties you with you that only you would ever know. So you're going to touch a fingerprint if you've got a fingerprint device. If you've got a face scanner, it's going to do that. If you want to create your little 4-digit key, it does that. But when it does the 4-digit key, just remember, it's not the 4-digit key that's doing the heavy lifting on that part. It's the fact that it knows at that point that your very computer, that somewhere buried on the motherboard of your chip right now, is a secret that even you don't know. It's secret from you. It doesn't need to be, but the main part is that the thing that unlocks it is that little 4-digit key. But unless they steal your computer with it, they're not getting anywhere. And the fact that you don't even need to know what it is kind of like, bonus on the whole thing. So, if all I have to do is remember a 4-digit key, or touch my fingerprint wherever I go, and everything is golden. That's absolutely the way to go. We implemented this across all of ComicBase, across all of Atomic Avenue, and when you guys see the new builds of the mobile apps that are coming out, you will also see that for the new versions of ComicBase.com that are on here. You'll be able to log in with your finger. It'll ask you to make a passkey. And nice thing about that also is once you've logged in here, this is now your backup if you ever forget the passkey on your other one, even if you don't have Windows Hello. So that's pretty cool. So look for that next couple days. It's pretty slick. I'm going to say I'm really digging it, and we need to kill passwords. It's just a thing. And I think you're going to see a lot more about this topic. We're going to try to put out a much more concise explainer on this one in the next couple days that goes into it. You'll see more about it in the next news flash. But it's if you saw the site kind of coming up and down over the last week or two, as we're basically changing out the entire locking mechanism of all the sites to make sure that we are now working to look towards passkeys as well as support the old passwords. that was what was going on with that, the whole time. But we actually managed to change all the locks of the building while people were coming in and out of the doors, and then we only inconvenienced people for a couple minutes at a time. I'm feeling pretty good about the whole effort, all things considered. But I also like the idea that in the future, when you ask us, hey, what's my password? I already don't know, because the best I'd ever see is a password hash, which does me or you no good. But I don't need to know. You don't need to know. And without even knowing that whole thing, the site can still conclusively prove it was you, and nothing had to travel over the internet. And that was kind of a little bit of a mathematical miracle. So neat. It's definitely the way of the future. Check it out. Tell me what you think. P. Bickford at Human-Computing is me, and I hope this was useful to you. It was very much a deep dive type stuff, but thank you for coming along for the ride. And hopefully next time we will be talking about something comic related. But in the meantime, just want to make it there. They just says anything that's unhackable eventually be hacked. Yeah, I mean, hack won't be the thing.
Sounds like quite the deep dive. You're absolutely right. In security.
What the hell? Yes, this is what happens when you trigger the little side button that's like the voice listener thing on your whole thing, and then you get commentary from your own AI about like, oh yes, that was quite a little deep dive there, Bickford. But no, it can be circumvented. But typically using means that are well beyond what you're expecting your password to do. Like I say, like right now, the weakest link in all of this one, and I actually looked into it, the one where most of the money comes from, where like if you ever get your account taken out, typically it's that damned authenticator or the SMS messaging or the password reset is the number one vector by which people get people's accounts at this point. We want to be getting to a point where we just don't have that vector around to exploit. And so we basically need, not everyone can get through the cat door, but some people are skinny. And so we want to make it so the cat door is also gone and that we're dealing with just the bank vault. So that's the future. We're not quite all the way there, but it's getting better. And the nice thing about the future is it's not only is it secure, but it also isn't crazy making by design, because passwords are crazy making by design. All right, guys. Well, that is about it. I will see you all on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.